Okay, let's get started. We have a lot to go through today, so we'll kick it off. Hi, my name is Katie Williams. I am the coordinator for partnerships and donations here at DCPS. This is Policy Palooza Part 1. We're really glad that you're all here today. This Part 1 of our Policy Palooza training is geared towards new school program providers or any other partners looking for a refresher on DCPS partner onboarding requirements. However, tomorrow we will be hosting part 2 of this training where we will go into further detail about key policies and requirements around student safety, equitable access to programming and media and events, and other things you need to know when you have become a school program provider. This training is required for both new and returning partners, but if you can't attend tomorrow, a recording will be available. And there will be more information on that training at the end of this presentation. Today's session is being recorded and closed captions are available if you need them. We will circulate the recording and PowerPoint deck after the training. There is a lot of content here, so we don't expect you to memorize it all. So all of this will be available, and this information generally is available on our website. So thank you in advance for your attention. Please don't hesitate to put questions into the Q&A box. We're going to have some designated time at the end to address them. So here's a quick agenda for today. First thing we're going to do is go over the objectives for today's training. We'll introduce you to our partnerships team and our priorities. Talk about the requirements for school program providers, systems and resources that are available to you. Go through a preview for Policy Palooza Part 2, share our contact information, and then, as I mentioned, we'll have time for our Q&A. So after today's session, we'll review the processes and procedures for DCPS school program providers for school year 25-26. We won't go through every detail on each slide today, but we have included many links to references in the slide decks as you need. So you can go, of course, always reach out to us as well for questions. So in today's session, we're going to discuss how DCPS works with school program providers, share requirements for school program providers, review systems and resources, and then answer any of your outstanding questions. So up next, we're going to introduce you to our team and our DCPS capital commitment. So our partnerships team is small but mighty and lives within the Office of External Affairs, which is led by Chief Kara Tyler. Abby, our manager of partner engagement, is here today, so I'm going to let her introduce herself quickly.
Hey everyone, my name is Abby. I'm the manager of partner engagement. I lead our partnerships and donations team. Just appreciate you making the time to join us today and hope you will also join us tomorrow. I dropped the registration link in the Q&A box as well. So thanks everyone.
Thanks, Abby. So as the partnerships team, we aim to build the capacity of central services, school administrators, and teachers to ensure partners, schools, and DCPS central services maximize the impact of their partnerships on key organizational goals and priorities. So our organizational goals and priorities are outlined in our capital commitment, which is DCPS's 5-year strategic plan. We have 3 priority areas: succeeding academically, connected to school, and prepared for what's next. These goals directly inform the work across our schools and our district. And when registering as a school program provider, you'll be asked to share how your program aligns with these priorities. So we encourage you to familiarize yourself with these 3 goals and think about how you can, your work can contribute to them, particularly in introductory conversations you might be having with schools about new partnership opportunities. So next we'll talk about what the definition of a school program provider is, or an SPP as we refer to it as, and the requirements you'll need to complete before programming begins. So as a partnerships team, we work primarily with a subset of partners that we call school program providers. These are organizations that provide their own programming to DCPS students, work with students 3 or more times per school year, and are not a health or mental health provider. These providers go through a separate screening process with the school mental health and health services teams. So here are some examples of what DCPS would and would not consider a school program providers. Examples of SPPs include tutoring programs, mentoring programs, dance class providers, aftercare providers. What would not be considered an SPP is one-time field trip opportunities, volunteer groups, dental health providers, or curriculum vendors. Because our SPPs work so closely with DCPS, there are several policies and procedures they must follow to protect our students in the district. This is an overview of all the requirements for SPPs, which we will review in more depth in the upcoming slides. And we really rely on schools and our providers to ensure all these steps are complete before programming begins. So we understand this is a lot of information, a lot of boxes to check. To be a DCPS partner. So we encourage you to use the tools on our website to help you figure out where to start and ensure you have all the requirements in place prior to the start of the program. You can check out our website, which is just dcpspartnerships.com, for our partner preparedness checklist and our Where Do I Start quiz. So the first step to becoming a school program provider is registering in the partnerships database. Many of you have probably already done this, but for those of you who haven't, we'll go through those steps here. So this registration allows your organization to share information with schools about your programming, which also ensures you're aware of our policies and procedures before moving forward with working with the district. Additionally, this is how we collect contact information for our partners to communicate key updates from our office via email and our newsletter. Hopefully all of you have received our newsletter, but once you've registered in the database, put your contact information in there, you'll be automatically added to that. Registration is confirmed annually in order to stay active in our database. That annual reconfirmation process is coming up this August, so please stay tuned for an email with instructions on completing your update. If it's not complete, then your profile will be inactive in the database. You can always reach out to us to activate it again, but in order to ensure that you're active going into this school year, please stay tuned for that email. And please note that being registered in our database is not a green light to begin programming. There are additional steps that you must complete, which I will discuss next. But first, we have a little pop quiz. So the chat is disabled here. So what I'll ask you to do is, if the answer is true, in the React option up top in Teams, you'll see a thumbs up. So if the answer is true, put a thumbs up. If the answer is false, there's a surprised face. So the question is, an organization providing health or mental health services is considered a school program provider. I see a lot of surprised faces, and you are correct. That is false. These organizations are not considered SPPs and should go through a separate process with our school mental health team. If this is your organization and you are looking to get vetted by that team, please reach out to us and we will connect you with them. So after registering in the database, the next step is to find a school or central services team to partner with. If you have not already identified a school or central services program team, here are some tips. So you can always reach out to a school that is in your neighborhood. We believe that one of the best connections you can make with a school is to show your connection to the community. You can email principals in schools with whom you are interested in partnering to discuss your program and its benefits to students. We recommend that you check out the school's comprehensive school plans, or CSPs, to learn more about their priorities for the year and how you might be able to align with them. You can always reach out to us to see if there are specific needs that your programming may address. And you can contact other relevant central services content teams and demonstrate how your program is aligned with the DCPS strategic priorities. If you check out our website, dcpspartnerships.com/partner, you'll find some more resources there on how to get connected to either those teams or schools. So the third and typically the longest step in this process is obtaining a formal agreement with DCPS. So in addition to registering in the database, all SPPs must have an official agreement with DCPS. This can either be in the form of a memorandum of agreement, or MOA, or a purchase order, or PO. If you are not invoicing DCPS directly for services, you will need an MOA. This includes partners that are receiving grant funding for programming. This includes DC government grants. If you are a Learn24 partner, you are receiving an Aussie grant, you will also need to obtain an MOA with DCPS. This also includes partners that are charging families or are being paid for by the school's PTA or another external entity. These school program provider MOAs are typically good for 5 years unless stated otherwise. So although it can be a lengthy process, then you're set for 5 years. If you are invoicing DCPS directly for services, you will need to establish a purchase order. These contracts and POs are typically managed by the school and issued by the Central Services Office of Contracts and Acquisitions, and they will expire at the end of each fiscal year, which is September 30th. And you must be registered as a DC government vendor to be issued a PO and receive payment. There is guidance on registering as a vendor on our website. And please note that this is a separate process from registering as an SPP. So this makes you a vendor across DC government. It's not a DCPS specific process. One important note, school principals are not allowed to sign agreements with SPPs. They must be signed by the DCPS chancellor if it's the MOA or the contracting officer if it's a purchase order. In some cases, schools can sign what we call partner acknowledgement forms that outline logistic items and general rules and expectations and do not include any legal language. If you have any questions about this type of documentation, feel free to reach out to us. So for SPPs who are not charging DCPS directly for services, how do you know if you have an MOA? Well, you can check the partnerships database to see whether an MOA is on file. And if you need a copy of your MOA, you can contact our team. I will note that our database includes MOAs that our team manages. So if you do have a relationship with another content team, it's possible that the MOA will be showing as, it won't be showing the MOA in the database. However, if you do have that agreement, you can always reach out to us and we can make note on the database that it is managed by another team. If you are a paid program provider, please check the DC vendor portal or contact your school or central services point of contact to confirm that your purchase order has been issued and valid. So this slide presents a quick overview of the memorandum of agreement process, but the main thing we'd like you to take away from this process is that it can take time to complete. We typically estimate around 90 days, but we've certainly seen it take longer. We've certainly seen it take shorter. So we really encourage you to get started as soon as possible. Even when you have to renew your MOA, please get on that as soon as possible and plan accordingly. So as shown on the previous slide, insurance requirements are determined by the DC Office of Risk Management based on the details of your programming. And although requirements may vary, all SPPs should expect to see the following requirements in their MOA. That includes commercial general liability, auto insurance, employer liability and workers' comp, cyber liability, umbrella or excess liability, and sexual abuse and molestation insurance. Any insurance negotiations will need to be done through the DC Office of Risk Management, and the DCPS partnerships team can support with that communication and coordinating a time to discuss. Please note that neither DC ORM nor DC Public Schools are able to recommend insurance providers, so we recommend that you do your own research ahead of time on what's out there. I just want to emphasize that DCPS does not determine these requirements, and any insurance negotiations must go through the DC Office of Risk Management. We cannot move forward with your MOA until DCORM confirms that all insurance requirements have been met. So I'm not going to go through all this slide in details, but one of the most time-consuming pieces of the MOA process is getting your insurance in place because of all these steps that you see outlined here. There is a lot of coordination across different DC government agencies before we can proceed with processing the MOA. So again, we just ask that you please work closely with your insurance broker to ensure that all requested information is uploaded to your database or sent to our partnerships team for the DC Office of Risk Management to review to prevent any delays and unnecessary back and forth. Once you go through the process, you'll continue to receive detailed emails back on what you need to submit and how to submit. And if you ever have any questions about that, you can reach out to us. If you are a Learn24 grantee, when requesting your MOA with DCPS, please also share your current COI and the email confirmation from Learn24 of insurance compliance, and that will help us expedite the process. Okay, so another pop quiz question here. Thumbs up if true, surprise face if false. The principal at the school in which I am providing programming should sign my DCPS MOA. Yes, lots of surprise faces. Again, that is false. Principals cannot sign MOAs. They must be signed by the chancellor. So step 4, a very critical step in this process, is having all staff and volunteers cleared by DCPS. So anyone working with students, whether in person or virtual, must complete the DCPS clearance process. These clearances are valid for 2 years, and DCPS does not accept clearances from any other jurisdiction or agency. This includes DCHR. So you will, if you are cleared by DCHR, you will also need to go through this process. This is an overview of the requirements for both volunteers and contractors. The only difference here is the drug test, which is a requirement for contractors, but not for volunteers. So the steps for completing the DCPS clearance process as a contractor or provider, I'll start with this definition here, that a contractor or provider is considered an individual providing services to DCPS students, schools, and or offices, and is receiving compensation for said services, either by DCPS or through a partner organization. So even if you are providing free services to DCPS, if you're being paid by your organization to provide those services, you would also be considered a contractor or provider. So the first step would be submitting your DCPS clearance application. That will ask a series of questions about yourself, and also TB assessments and sex offender registry screening. The next step is to set up your application station account. So this is a new step as of last year. But within 1 or 2 days of submitting your application, you will receive an email to complete the application station intake form. These forms must be complete before you schedule your field print appointment to get your fingerprints. DCPS will cover the cost of that, but you will need that information, the login information from application station, in order to set up that appointment. The next step is to complete your fingerprinting appointment through FieldPrint. And then the last step is to complete the mandatory drug and alcohol testing screening. So all contractors and program providers with possible unsupervised interaction with students for 10 or more minutes must complete and pass this drug and alcohol screening. DCPS tests on urinalysis 4-panel drug screen. And you can see our website for information on scheduling your drug test. I want to note here that any contractors renewing clearances without a lapse in services will not have to undergo this MDAT screening. So the process for volunteers, as I mentioned, is the same except for that drug test component. Volunteers are individuals who are not compensated for their work with DCPS, either by DCPS or by the partner organization. So same steps here, minus that drug test. So some clearance process tips and tricks. You can use the following information to help your employees or volunteers go through this process. The first thing is confirm your staff and volunteers have active clearances. You can collect and track individuals' DCPS clearances so that you know that they're cleared and when they will need to renew, so you can remind them. Confirm your staff and volunteer have applied, submitted their DCPS clearance application. You can do that by asking them to submit their confirmation emails. You can include your organization's contact information when, or ask your employees or volunteers to include your organization's contact information when they fill out their clearance applications. And help us track the correct people. So if you are to reach out asking for the status of employee clearance, and reach out to our DCPS clearance team, please include their full name and either the last 4 digits of their social security number or their birth date so that our clearance team can check on the status of that. The next step is to enter into a building use agreement with the Department of General Services. So this is only for providers who are operating outside of regular school or instructional hours. So even if school is still open, if it's outside of the normal school day, that's when you will be required to have a building use agreement. So you must work with your school and the realty office at the Department of General Services to submit an application to use facilities. Again, regular school hours are instructional hours, and this will vary school to school, so please check with your school point of contact. These applications must be signed by the principal, so versus the memorandum of agreement that can't be signed by a principal, the building use agreements do need to be signed by the principal, and then should be emailed to realty.applications@dc.gov. And you please copy the dcps.bua@k12.dc.gov email when you submit your initial application. We're trying to be looped in. Our operations team is trying to be looped in on these more so we can better track the status of BUAs. DGS will ask for a certificate of insurance with DC government listed as the insured as part of this process. And depending on several factors, SPPs might be charged fees for rent, security, and or custodial overtime. And applications are due 20 days prior to the start of services. I will note that this is different for summer because of the influx of applications we get for summer. This application window is a little bit longer. Typically, we require all organizations to submit those applications at the beginning of May for summer programming. And the last step here is obtaining an annual donation agreement if you're providing free programming to DCPS. So organizations that are providing free programming to DCPS and its families must report their donations each year as dictated by the mayor's office. SPPs will receive a reminder to do so each summer ahead of the school year. This is also built into the SPP reconfirmation process in the database, so you'll get a reminder about this. This is a relatively, looks like the slide didn't advance. Done.
Good.
You got it? Okay. All right, so as I was saying, this is a relatively simple process. For in-kind donations, it'll only take about a week to get this turned around. And it's just a quick 2-3 minute form that you'll need to fill out. So you'll be reminded of that as part of the reconfirmation and a separate reminder later this summer. Okay, this is our last pop quiz. If you have a clearance with DCHR, you do not need to complete the DCPS clearance process. Thumbs up if true, surprise face if false. Some great students in the room here today. The answer is false. Yes, all providers and volunteers must be cleared through the DCPS clearance process. No other clearances will be accepted, including DCHR. So this is an overview of all the requirements we just reviewed, including where you can find more information and the best point of contact for each step. I'm going to leave this up for anyone if they want to screenshot the page. And we will also be sharing this recording on our website so you can access it then. Okay, so we just went through a lot of information. And as I said up top, no expectation that you've memorized all of this. So I'm going to share with you now where you can find this going forward throughout the process. So I really want to emphasize our website as a central place to access this kind of information. This has several information about the partnerships and donations policies and resources, that DCPS resources for partners image here is located on our website, where you can find links to additional resources and trainings, including a series of fall lunch and learns that we did back in 2023 that we're hoping to do some more of this year. You can also access our school partnerships database from our website. This is where you will update your profile and view your partner agreement status. This is also where we'll ask you to go this summer when reconfirming your partner registration. We also have a school partnerships toolkit. This has various sections to it. Best practices and information on norming with your school on important school level aspects of your partnership. So as I mentioned also in the beginning of this presentation, tomorrow we will be hosting part 2 of this training. Thank you, Abby, for dropping that registration link in. That will be at 12 p.m. tomorrow, and this is required for both new and returning partners. So to register, the same way that you registered for this one, you'll register for that Teams webinar. If you can't make it, a recording of the training will be available after on our website, so you can watch it in your own time. As I mentioned, this is for both new and returning partners, and it will cover key policies and requirements around student safety, equitable access to programming, and media and events, including things like mandated reporter training, incident reporting, our field trip policy, accommodation requests, language access services, our OSCE licensure process, and hosting events at a DCPS school. So I will leave this up here. This is our contact information for our team, Abby, myself, and Chief Garrett Tyler. Our DCPS partnerships inbox, that's something that Abby and I manage. So if you reach out there, one of us will get it. DCPS clearances inbox and field trips if you have questions specific to that. And then if you are a paid partner and are looking to become registered in the vendor portal, there's some information here on that help desk. That's all we have for today. So I'm going to go to the Q&A now. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in. So I see a question here. We are an indoor rowing studio. In that case, whom should we contact? Would we consider it as a health or mental health services provider? The answer here is no. You can go through our process. This is really if you're providing clinical services. If you are providing, physical education, sports programming, that certainly you can come through our process for that. Schools will issue a purchase order. Do we still need a MOA? If you have a purchase order, yeah, I see Abby responded here. It does kind of depend, but if you do have a purchase order for the school, if the school is paying you entirely for the cost of programming directly, if you're invoicing them directly, then that MOA counts as your official agreement. Can you partner with more than one school during the school year? Yes, definitely. Our MOAs are not school specific. So once you have that MOA in place, you're able to partner with all of our 117 schools.
I see a question about field trips. So if you're providing a field trip to students during school hours, would you still need to fill out a building use agreement? If you're not operating programming out of the building, outside of regular school hours, then you don't need that building use agreement. If you're a field trip provider, then you would need to work with the school to make sure the field trip protocols are followed. We'll talk about that a little bit more tomorrow, but you don't need that building use agreement.
I see a question here about the vendor application. For transparency, we're not super involved in that, so I don't know how long it takes. I'll go back to this slide. This number I've heard has been fairly responsive, that you can get in touch with someone there. So I would recommend reaching out to that team. And there's a question here about starting the clearance process if you don't have a finalized purchase order. You're certainly welcome to start the clearance process before your MOA or purchase order is finalized. That's actually probably a good thing to get started on that. The clearance is good for 2 years. So all fingers crossed, if all goes well, you will certainly have your purchase order or MOA within that period.
There's a question here about if a DCPS employee is a partner in a business, can the business still become a partner, or are there conflicts? That's a great question. So yes, the organization itself can partner with DCPS, but the DCPS employee cannot represent the organization in any negotiations with the district or in any official capacity. So they cannot be the one managing the MOA process, for example, or signing the MOA. We also recommend that before beginning that partnership process, that the organization connect with the city's ethics agency, BEGA. So BEGA has and I'm happy to share that information. There is a email that you can reach out to for sort of like proactive advice, where they can help ensure that you and that employee are sort of keeping everything above board to manage the distinction of those relationships. And then it would also be very important that the DCPS employee is taking care of any work related to the organization, the partner organization, is done outside of their tour of duty.
There's a question here, a comment here about difficulties reaching school principals regarding after-school programming. It really depends on the school. Each school is set up a little differently on who kind of oversees that block of time, if there even is anyone. So we always recommend the school principal, maybe an assistant principal. If you go on the school's website, they'll often have contact information listed for various employees. So reaching out to an assistant principal or even the manager of strategy logistics or director of strategy logistics at the school might be another strategy to use. So there's a question here about mentioning volunteer organizations didn't need to go through the process, but then the next slide seemed to indicate the volunteers did have to go through this process. Yeah, I think I know what this confusion is. So back where we were talking about what is an SPP, we said volunteer group. So what I mean by this is if you are coming in to volunteer not under your organization or like a part of a program that your organization is holding. So if you're coming to like do beautification at the school, like help set up classrooms at the start of the year, or if you're volunteering with a existing, like let's say the school hosts a tutoring hour after school and a couple of volunteers are coming in during that time. In that case, you wouldn't be considered a school program provider. But if you're coming in with an organization, providing the programming under an organization, and you are a volunteer for that organization, that is when that process is required and when you would need to get the clearances and all that. Volunteer groups too, if you are coming in more than one time a school year, you would also need to get clearances. But actually going through the school program provider process is only if you're coming in under that organization hosting your own programming. I hope that answered the question.
Katie, there's a question about a donation. So if volunteers within an organization are funding an event that the nonprofit is is hosting, are those donations required to be reported?
Tiers under imperfectly funded. So I think if I'm understanding this correctly, actually fund any. Other donations required to be. That you're hosting your own event, that your volunteers are contributing to your own event that you're hosting for the school. In that case, I would reach out. I think I'm not totally clear on it. If it's like a school sponsored event and you're helping to contribute to that, then I would say definitely yes. But if you're hosting your own event, then likely not. But you can reach out to me and I can get more details about that. We will definitely share the deck after. Let's see.
I see a question about clarifying the curriculum vendor. What we mean there is someone who's selling curriculum to a school. So it's not specific to the curriculum piece. It's specific to the fact that they're selling something to the school. We lost Katie. Her computer decided to restart. So I am going to finish us out and see what other questions we have. You are a school-based partner. If you're in the building after school hours as part of a school-sponsored event, then the school will take care of the building use pieces. What we're really talking about here are organizations that are using space specifically for their program purposes. Any other questions on the particularities of these steps? Like Katie mentioned, the partnerships website is a great resource. We have all of these steps laid out, we think, pretty clearly with lots of hyperlinks. This deck and this presentation will also be available there. We'll also email it after we host part 2 tomorrow. So we're hopeful that these resources can be something you can refer back to over the course of the school year, but always feel free to reach out to us. Steph, I see your question about City Tutor. If you wouldn't mind reaching out directly to the partner inbox, that would be great, because I think it sort of depends the capacity in which City Tutor would be engaging with the district. A question about, can you be a partner as a national nonprofit organization, or do you have to be registered particularly in DC? No, you don't have to be a DC specific program. We have lots of organizations who are either affiliated with a national, larger national umbrella. So that's not a requirement. A question around whether or not we have a comprehensive list of SPP vendors. So vendors are, I just want to be clear on terminology, vendors becoming an approved district vendor is a separate process. So in terms of our list of approved school program providers, that's what we house in the partnerships database, which all registered program providers have a profile in. So that's where both partners and schools, so partners will only have access to information about their program, but schools are able to see all the profiles of approved SPPs and explore information about the programs they offer, who has an MOA, who charges for their services, et cetera. I want to go back to the question about purchase orders versus MOAs. So there is some, it depends a little bit in the structure of your program as to, it's not sort of as clear cut as to whether or not you charge or don't charge. That is typically how we sort of decide where you, like what bucket you fall into, but there are certain particularities of programs that can shift whether you do also need an MOA if you're a fee-for-service organization. So if you have a question, if it's not very clear cut, just please reach out to us and we'll help make sure you get all the right documentation.
Abby, I'm back.
Oh, hello.
Excel. My computer just decided to die on me in the middle of this. Did you answer the curriculum vendor one?
Yes. I think we're pretty up to speed. The latest question that just came in is around whether or not we offer events where new partners can meet schools. So that's not something we have historically done. Well, I guess historically we did used to have a fair, then COVID came and we haven't picked that back up since, truthfully, because we got feedback that it wasn't the most helpful. So one, the Deputy Mayor for Education's office does host 2 events, summer in the city and after school in the city. That is an opportunity to connect with families who are looking for different program opportunities. And then the main mechanism we have for connecting providers with schools is the partnerships database. And then obviously when we meet with schools and they have questions about particular programs. So we're open to feedback on other ways we could help make those connections. You know, we are a 2-person team with 117 schools. So we are not able to do sort of the level of matchmaking that folks might be wishing for, but we're always open to feedback if you think there are other ways we can help amplify programming opportunities. Katie mentioned the annual re-registration process. When you go in and renew your registration, there's a place where you can indicate if you are open to bringing on new schools. So that just make sure that, you know, if that is the case for your organization, that you click that box so that they see that, you know, when they're exploring the database. Any final questions?
Ms. Valley, and I see your question here. I would recommend, I think Abby put their email in response to your last one, but reaching out to the clearance team, they should be able to check for you. All right, well, if not, I will drop in, well, hopefully everyone has our email, just dcps.partnerships@k12.dc.gov. If there are any questions that we didn't get to during this training, or if anything comes up after this, please reach out to us. We hope to see you all tomorrow for part 2 of our training. And thank you again for your time and for your interest in partnering with DC Public Schools.
Thanks so much, everyone. Hope to see you tomorrow.